Hi there, my name's Annette from Sunbeam Fabric Art. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe if you like what you see. Today I'm going to take you through this giant shopping bag tote. I have made a couple of grocery bag totes, just normal size, and my husband requested a specific size to carry two 12 packs of soda pop. So this one is going to be wide enough and deep enough to hold two 12 packs of soda pop across the bottom, cans, 12-ounce cans. So, yeah, I'm going to take you through making this bag and enjoy. So the first thing I had to do was figure out how big I wanted my bag to be. So this is a general shape of a bag or tote with a bottom. And this opening here makes a box corner, which we'll go over when we get to that section of the bag actually being made. For two 12 packs of pop, I know I needed my bottom to be before seam allowances 10 by 18, after seam allowances 9, 10-ish by 17. So I did need it to be 17 inches wide across once it was finished. The size of the height on the side of the bag is 15 inches. And this 28-inch measurement is how wide the bag is, minus these 5-inch cutouts which fold to make the side of the bag. So the front of the bag is actually this big inside these dotted lines. Then the bottom of the bag is here, and these little 5 by 15-inch strips are the sides. So I laid this out on my bed to make it a little bit easier. The lining of my bag is laid right side down. I'm making a little sandwich here. The next thing I did was lay down my batting, and you can see this is batting scraps that I've stitched together with a zigzag stitch. Next I spread out and smoothed out the batting. The next thing I did was lay down the outside of my bag right side up. So my sandwich includes a lining right side down, a batting spread out, and then the exterior of the bag is laid right side up. And that is what makes my little sandwich. The next thing to do was smooth it all out. And here you see it all laid out and smoothed out. So I do want to point out that you can do whatever you want for a tote. You could use one solid piece of fabric. In my case, I chose to make a cutesy design with some football fabric that I had. You can do whatever you want. You can sew strips together, you can make it scrappy, you can do crazy quilt blocks. Basically, do whatever you want to do to make fabric for the exterior of your bag. I chose to do chevrons in our local NFL football team's colors, and then I had this football fabric left over, so that's what I did. So the next thing I did, I needed to stitch my sandwich together, so I just did straight line quilting across the shorter side of the bag. So I just went back and forth doing stitch lines, straight stitch lines. I kind of did a stitch on each side of any seams. So that was pretty easy to do. I just ran it through the sewing machine over and over. The next thing I had to do was trim all the excess off. So I went around the outside of my bag and I trimmed it down to match everything, match the outside of the bag. And here is my finished piece of sandwich. It's a quilt sandwich laid out on the floor, all trimmed. So welcome to my math studio. Yes, quilters, we have to have math. Well, I had to figure out how much fabric I needed for straps, how much fabric I needed for binding. So my straps, I cut to 3 3/4 inches wide, and then I basically pressed them together and pressed them together again, and I'll show you that in a bit. How much do I need for a strap? I decided since this needed to be a strong bag, my strap was going to be just one strap, and I was going to go all the way around, just up, down, across the bottom, back up the top, over, back down, across the bottom, back over. So how much does that take? Well, I liked a 20-inch for a handle length for this tote. I know my sides are 15 inches tall, and I know it's 10 inches across the bottom of my bag. So this is why you want to keep your map handy, because you're going to need to know all these measurements to figure out straps. Now on a tote for a lighter weight bag, I would not go all the way across the bottom. I would just probably sew from the bottom of the bag one strap on this side and then one strap on this side, and not really reinforce the bottom. But since this is going to be carrying a heavy load, I thought I needed the extra strength, so I did one continuous strap. So basically what I have to do is add 15 plus 10 plus 15 plus 20 plus 15 plus 10 plus 15 plus 20 to get back to the beginning. It's like a little maze. So then on the binding, I know the top of my bag is going to need a binding, and that's going to be 28, 28, 10, 10, total of 76. I'm going to cut width of fabric times 2.5, get approximately a 40-inch long strip. So 2 would get me to 80 inches, 80 to 88, somewhere in that neighborhood, which should give me enough to go around the bag, just on the top. So on my straps, I needed, I think it ended up being three or four strips. So that is some math for you, and that is how to figure out your straps. Just figure out where you're going to attach your straps, and then you can calculate from there how much strap length you need. So I need to attach all my binding strips and my strap strips together. To do that, I lay right sides together on the end of the fabric. Then I will draw a little diagonal line from corner to corner. So I laid my ruler down from the little opening between the two pieces of fabric and just drew a diagonal line across. And I will take this to the sewing machine. I will sew across directly on that line. Then for my strap fabric, which as you can see is a little bit wider, it's 3 3/4 inches wide, I did the same thing. I laid right sides of the fabric together at a right angle. Then I drew a diagonal line from the little corner to the other little corner that is made when you cross the fabric. And once that line is drawn, I'll take it over to the sewing machine and sew directly on that line. So here's my football fabric with that line stitched across from the corner that is made when you cross the fabrics. I trimmed off the excess, and then I will press that open to make a nice long continuous piece of binding. For the binding, I folded the fabric strip in half and pressed right sides out. I'm doing the same thing to the strapping fabric, joining them together, trimming off the extra, and I will press that open into a long continuous strip. So if you remember, for the binding at the top, we just folded in half. For the strap fabric, I'm folding in a quarter fold and then folding in half to create the strap. And we'll press that down so it's nice and flat. All right, and here you can see my big pile of strap that I have made. Okay, the next step is pinning my strap to the bag. And I started on the bottom. I started on the bottom of my bag because eventually this is going to be one continuous strap going around the bag. It's going to end up where it started. I put my straps in 3.5 inches from the edge of the bottom of the bag.
And I just put little pins in to mark that 3.5 inch mark. And then when I actually pin the strap down, I was able to just use that pin that was already there as a placeholder. And then pinning the strap down to the front and the back of the bag that had the design on it, that was pretty easy to do because I was able to line it up with a vertical seam. Now I knew I wanted my straps to be 20 inches long, so I did take my long ruler, measure out that 20, marked it with a pin, and then I took that side around to the top on the other side of the front of the bag. And of course, you always want to double check that you don't have a twist in your strap. When I got to the other side of the bottom of the bag, I did remeasure my 3.5 inches in, just so I could put that pin in it and make sure everything stayed straight with my strap. At the top of the other side of the bag, I measured that 20 inches again so that my straps would be the same. When I got to the other side of the bag where I started, I had folded down the edge of the beginning so it would not be a raw edge, and I tucked in the raw edge into the beginning part of the strap. The next thing I needed to do was take this to the sewing machine and stitch straight lines on the front and the back of the bag and the bottom. I wanted to leave a 2-inch loose spot at the top of the bag for the binding because the binding is going to get attached before the strap gets sewed down all the way. So here you can see I did stitch down on each side of the strap, really close to the edge, about an 1/8 inch from the edge, but I did not stitch down that top strip, that top 2.5 inch strip of white fabric. I did not stitch my handle of my strap down to that. Putting a pin in it right there to hold it out of the way while I complete sewing the bag together. And finishing off that strap will be the very last thing that we do. Once those straps were pinned out of the way, I just folded the bag together, right sides together. The first step is going to be to stitch the side panels together. Those little 5-inch extensions. We'll do that box corner later, but first we need to stitch the sides of the bag together. Alright, here you can see I stitched a 1/2 inch seam, and then I did a blanket type stitch to catch all those loose ends. I don't use a serger, so that is one way I finish off inside seams. These could be bound as well. If you really wanted to finish it, you could do some binding on that edge. Alright, let's talk about the box corner. So now that we have stitched those side seams, we have a little box. We're going to pull that open, almost like pulling open a bag of microwave popcorn. That's how I describe it anyway. You just pull it apart, and then the seam that we stitched on that side seam should be right in the middle of your opening. So you can see here we have that opening, and there is the side seam right in the middle. And the next step is to take that over to the sewing machine, and I ended up sewing a 1/2 inch seam plus that blanket stitch to get my finished box seam on the inside. Once you stitch those box seams, it's important to turn it. Just check those seams, make sure there's nothing showing through. If there is, it's an easy time to re-stitch it. Okay, everything looked good on my bag, so I turned it back wrong side out, and I'm going to stitch my binding to the bag on the inside first. So I trimmed off the selvage edge of my binding strip, and I made a little triangle diagonal fold. Then I folded that back in half, and then I pinned to my the edge of my bag. And I'm going to start stitching a 1/4 inch seam all the way around my bag. I'm not stitching over where those pins are. I'm leaving that little loose flap will be to tuck in the other end of the binding when I get all the way around the bag. Okay, I did make it all the way around the bag, and I just trimmed the end of my binding at a diagonal, and I tucked it inside that other edge and then finished stitching that down. Once it's all tucked and sewed down, you flip the binding to the front of the bag, and I chose to stitch mine down with a zigzag stitch. So I just went all the way around the bag on the top side, the outside, and stitched with a zigzag stitch. Alright, and here you can see the finished outside of the bag, and there's that zigzag stitch. I went all the way around with a zigzag and stitched down that binding to the front. And the last step on this bag is to draw these straps out, pin them to the top of the bag where they were not attached, and then stitch a line all the way around on my strap. And a little note, when I've made these tote bags before, I had one bag where I actually sewed the front and the back of the bag together because I didn't pin the back of the bag out of the way when I did this step. So just a little warning, make sure when you stitch these seams, you stitch these straps, the final lap, don't stitch the front of your bag to the back of your bag like I did. So when I finished the bag, I went downstairs and I put 2 12-packs of 7-Up in it and tested it out. The size was perfect. Did fit exactly what I wanted it to fit. However, when I went to lift the bag, I did not realize how heavy this was. So as you will see in the next couple of pictures, I did reinforce. I took a piece of canvas webbing 24 inches long. As you remember, my straps were 20 inches from top to top. I cut 2 canvas strappings that were 24 inches each. I pinned those to the back side of the bag, the inside of the strap on each side, and restitched over that canvas. The shopping tote is all done now and ready to take it to the grocery store and give it a try. Looks like it's going to be plenty strong enough for the goal of 2 12-packs of pop with maybe some bread, chips, things like that on top. So I'm excited to get this to the grocery store and try it out, especially because it's in our local football team's colors. Yay, go Chiefs. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this little trial and error journey. My name's Annette, Sunbeam Fabric Art. Have a wonderful day.